Everything ties together from this central source at the top. Quite interesting when you look at it, isn't it? But you think about the things that you should be offended by, that you're even watching daily. You're consuming the filth, really, which is called entertainment today. And at one time, you say you wouldn't let these people who put it across on television so anywhere near your children, if you had any sense at all. And now you're watching the same stuff yourself. And it's put across as entertainment. And I can go on and on and on. But it's not for me to moralize. I'm not moralizing. I'm just telling you how morality is flexible and suits those who own you. That's why if they had some strange plan of more conflict for 100 years war or something, they would switch it so quickly back, and every movie would be about the brave officer going off to fight in the war, and he'd be married again with a wife and children again. That would be the norm, and so on. But it would suit them fine. It's very, very flexible according to what you consume. Remember that article I read too, from Parameters, the Army magazine, and it was written by an intelligence officer in the US who was very proud of what their achievements in basically using the same techniques that helped basically take down America, and they're using them abroad on our cultures now and how successful it would be and so on. But they also talked about the mind has no firewall, and if you lowered the firewall off the mind, if you have one, if you're sentient, you know that ideas and what you're seeing are pretty dangerous. They're weaponized. Weaponized glimpses or images or whatever, very weaponized. You wouldn't believe how much work goes into it all and sticks in your head and has its consequences. Male and female, doesn't make any difference. They've got this equal opportunity brainwashing and equal opportunity contamination for everyone in this system. The mind has no firewall, but always remember that if you're aware at all, try and always be aware that you must keep that firewall up. And that also means, well, I'm not going to watch this and I'm not going to watch that. I've read articles too on the air a few years back about a psychiatrist, I think it was, in Canada, who was brave enough to put an article out in the newspaper why he'd left the job. And it got to him, and his job was literally being assigned to work with perverts in prisons and things and go through these programs, these stupid programs that really are meant to contaminate and destroy the person that watches the stuff. The idea being they can alter the behaviour of these pervs by little shocks or whatever it happens to be, if the rapid flickering of this scene, that scene, and of things that you shouldn't be watching in the first place, and how it's infecting him, his behaviour, his thoughts on things, and no doubt affecting his family life as well. Well, why are you watching all that kind of stuff? And I'm not really, as I say, I'm not moralizing. I'm saying, why are you watching that kind of stuff? If you truly want to be your own person, or do you? Do you want to be just a product where your masters are quite content and know all about you, know what you're watching and what you're into? Or would you rather be an individual? Now getting back into facts and how flexible they are today, depending on what facts you want to use. True science would use everything that comes forward presented as facts. But they don't. When you're only selecting what you want, it's for a different purpose. It's not science at all. And there are plenty so-called scientists out there who wouldn't be working, even sweeping the streets, if they couldn't get all the grants handed to them. And they're involved in political purposes. Of course they are. They used to tell you that you've had many ice ages in the past. We don't know how old the world is, but we know there's been many ice ages, and they keep drilling and doing these samplings and cores and things, and they can tell you when this happened, that happened, and all the rest of it, in what different parts of the world. We know that folk came into Britain for a long time, settled, etc., then they moved out again because the ice came back in. After it was all over, it came back. Well, what happens between the ice ages? You get warming periods. And those warming periods will happen whether man's here or they're not here. If it didn't have warming periods, you'd have a constant ice age. And if you had that, none of us on the planet would survive. we wouldn't be here. So facts are very flexible according to whatever political and social agenda is afoot. And to please the masters, believe you me, they can really bend anything at all and get lots of people in authority who don't even blink when they're told to con you, and even come down to the Inquisition time, because they're coming down to it now, when they haul you up and do their new exposures to the world. Look at this denier. Look at it and put you in the dock. You're a denier. You're an evil. This like the show trials they had in the Soviet Union. And you'll stand there and say, yes, I did. I denied it. I denied the sun. I denied this. And you'll say that, no, the sun has something to do with climate. They'll say, oh, isn't that awful? You actually said that. You actually said this. Oh, well, yes, I did. And then you'll say that you went down into the streets and the back roads, the poor areas, and you did debauched things with prostitutes, and you picked up syphilis. And that's what Orwell had in 1984 too. And just like Winston, you'll say it all, and you'll hang your head in shame, absolute shame. After the torture. There'll be lots of torture too. And they'll really throw the book at you. And if they could bump you off, like they did in the Soviet system, and they still do in other communist systems, then, that's a warning to everybody else. Don't use your own common sense. Whatever you do, repeat what your bosses and your masters tell you, or else. And this shows you how wrong those old Egyptians and everybody else was, because they thought the sun had a lot to do with it too, of warming the planet. But nope, it's not true. Now you know. Mind you, if it suits them to change it again in the future, they'll do that once again. And I'll never mention that they taught you to believe that it had nothing to do in this particular generation, you see. This is how it's done, guys. See, truth has nothing to do with how you're ruled. It never had, actually. Really never did have anything to do with that. Last week I mentioned how governments in Australia, but they have them all over the world doing the same thing, putting out tenders for people and agencies and organisations who can prove, and they get little courses, but they must be able to prove that they can make people change their mind on anything. They're persuaders. Going door to door to get out of the car. Make you feel bad. Aren't you ashamed? Aren't you ashamed that a little kangaroo down the road there might not get born because you're driving your... Do you understand? The population of Australia is pretty small. The size of the continent is huge. And it's mostly deserts and so on too. And it's going to be that way whether you stop driving your cars or not. But again, reality has got nothing to do with the topics anymore. Just do what you're told, obey. And I don't think there's even a comedy or anything you watch on television that won't have all these little things stuck in there to make sure you start repeating it all. And you do. You do. Sad that we're like animals in that respect. As Bertrand Russell says, repetition. And you eventually start repeating the same terms. Remember, the masters at the top always give you the terminology to use. Have you noticed that? Always do. And that's how they can win arguments and even stop arguments from occurring. By always managing the conversation, you manage it through the terminology. You can get self-censoring terminology. You start to reply to something, and if you're using their terms, it automatically brings you into a loop where you just come to a dead stop. Very clever, though, but well proven, too, by the behaviorists. Now remember, as I said before, the nation-state was to wither away. And all the big organizations are put out there to put forth all the topics you're supposed to think about. And it also tells all those in politics and bureaucrats, here's the agenda. Don't say it's agenda, but you know it's agenda. Just go along with it. And put out by all the different, big foundations, the big front foundations, the multi-billion-dollar foundations that run all the NGOs and think tanks galore and every particular... And you don't elect them in, but they run you on behalf of their masters. And here's an article here, and it was from the World Economic Forum, this other private organisation. Again, it's, you don't vote for them either. And they keep coming out from their think tanks, just stacks of stuff for the next year and all that. Cities, not nation states, will determine our future survival. Here's why. It's a rah-rah thing, you see. It says nation states are looking increasingly outdated. They're outdated, you see, and even dangerous. Some of them are outright belligerent and threatening catastrophic war. Which ones? Well, some nation states are exhibiting neo-imperial tendencies. Neo-imperial, eh? Most are waning in power and influence. The 369-year experiment in nation building is coming unstuck, with most nation states failing to deal with the major global challenges of our era, including climate change. There you go again. And we used to deal with climate change. We used to have umbrellas. And we had raincoats, good ones too, not these little awful things you get the day that if a little breeze blows, the seams come apart. Have you noticed that, eh? And when it was hot, we just wore shorts and stuff. And anyway, forced migration. And it's interesting when you see the lead of it, see, climate change, forced migration, and then terrorism. Things are connected to pandemics and more. Interesting too that there's actually clusters of, I could go on, even when I read it, like the pandemics are happening, even the clusters of things that are happening with particular bacterium and viruses and even fungi that are created in laboratories. It's really amazing what we're living through. But again, all they have to do at the top is never admit to it. Yes, it can be done, but never admit to it. It's like when they're using the HAARP technologies. You can hear it banging away on the shortwaves day after day, for year after year. As long as they don't mention we're doing it, they just don't talk about it at all. It's so easy to do, isn't it? Same with the aerial spraying. For years and years, they wouldn't even just laugh at you and try to ridicule you, which is always the first step to do. And then they start to admit they're doing little tests here and there, even though it's massive tests. It's not testing at all, actually. It's well underway. It has been for years. And pandemics too. And it's interesting that even this area here, I'm in here, is a great area for all these things. For the aerial spraying. They've even had court cases a few years back, a place not far from here, where US planes were coming over low and heavily spraying. It was causing stillborns and different things to happen, pneumonias amongst the people. And it went all the way to High Court in Canada. It wasn't denied. It was a test. And they're always having little tests. It's amazing. There's a lot of Indians in this area and reservations. I think it was last year they had, and maybe the year before too, they had all these sudden mysteries across all these hundreds of miles of Indian children suddenly having these little spots in their faces and across their body, and eventually they put it down to some kind of strange fungi, And there's no more, then it's hushed up again very quickly. And then we have an instance just this week, I think it was, where a cluster of children down to Little Current Way, or a cluster of them, to say, have come down with this awful thing that's pretty deadly, believe you me, and you can believe me, of blastomycosis. And it's just a mystery again, why this strange blastomycosis is affecting animals and children and adults too. Or it might be some strange little kind of wet area, small wet area, and all this kind of stuff. We've had years of pouring rain here with all the heavy spraying that we get now, and that's old stuff. And so much so the fungus in the trees, I think 2 years ago, was just incredible. All around the trees, this isn't just the fungus you see coming from the north, etc. It doesn't matter. I say facts don't matter anymore, because the big boys at the top just lie all the time. But people are getting, so again, pandemics of what? And then you go into these things, and some of them were developed going back into just pre-World War II, into World War II, for various purposes. It's quite amazing when you get into it, really into it, isn't it? Oh, yes, we can do these things, but we're not doing it. And the general public will think, oh, they'd never do that to us. That's the way into the mass grave. Oh, they'd never do that to us. If you can go back in history to all the peoples that have said that in the most horrific times of the 20th century in different countries, they'd never do that to us. Aye. Anyway, cities, not nation states, will determine our future survival. To start, half of humanity currently live in sharp contrast to most of human existence, when less than 1% of the global population congregated in settlements. And it goes on and on and on. 2/3 of the world's population will be urban dwellers by 2030. Today's cities power over 2/3 of global GDP. That's because they make nothing. They just print up money. It says they're the marvels of innovation because they don't make anything at all, do they? And engines for prosperity. The whole prosperity kick, believe you me, is very short-lived. Just to get the agenda through. And money will keep getting printed as long as they're on this part of the agenda. And it says cities are often plural and cosmopolitan, while nation-states are closed, nativist and parochial. Then you go through the global the new coalition called the Global Parliament of Mayors is also urging cities everywhere to take advantage of the devolution revolution. Do you know you're electing your mayors so they can get rid of your little area and your country? Did you know that? So I've got all the links on this article here, the new urban agenda, United Cities and local government, and so on and so on. And then global covenant of mayors for climate and energy. So they're all every agenda, all these little psychopaths that want to get on and do whatever they're told. They will do whatever they're told, and they'll say what they're told to say. To be good to their masters, and their masters are not the people who think they elect them in. It's not you. This is, it brings together more than 7,100 cities across 119 countries to take practical steps to harness the power of renewables. And so on it goes. It goes on with the meeting in Davos, etc., and the TED 2017. All these things created by the masters at the top. All of them are. As I say, there's a pyramid and there's a capstone at the very top. Yep. And then you have this one here, and it's to do with, well, the same kind of thing, really. It says, populism is poison. Plural cities are the antidote. Same term again. Plurality, you see. Plural cities are the antidote. They don't want populism. And actually, they're bashing Trump as well, and so on. And this article here gives the global agenda and cities and urbanization and global governance. Yeah, all the stuff that the Chatham House and the CFR and Royal Institute of International Affairs have created for us to believe in, you see, and help to manage. And they go on about watch the politics of fear and rebellion of the forgotten from the World Economic Forum's annual meeting. It gives you the whole news brief there, basically, a link again. And global anxiety is feeding the growth of nationalist movements. I'll tell you, the reason for that is that people know from history, people with a bit of memory, in just common sense, they can sense it actually. If you can't go to people who are governing you in very basic, and when I say basic, they're essential needs for you and others around you. If you can't go and meet those people, and they're over in some other nation somewhere, running a whole bunch of other nations, you are way down the totem pole, and what you say doesn't matter. And everybody knows that. Everybody in the EU knows that now, the European Union. No. With this runaway super Soviet, and that's what they called it, remember? A lot of the old dissidents from the Soviet Union who were in prison, they came out and said that this economic union, which is not meant to be a democratic system, is run by this private, kind of secretive organization at the very top. The politicians down below, it says, literally have no power to do anything or change anything. The commissars above them are the ones who don't know. And the folk can't even find out who they are. So these dissidents said that this is the real Soviet, who wanted for a long time to have the whole of Europe as one. Anyway, it gives you the economic roots of populism. And it says, and of course that's because free trade is taking all your work away from you too. And it says, we've seen the merger of ultra-nationalism and right-wing populism before. It did not end well. The world's again entering a period that is easily recognizable as pre-authoritarian and fascistic. Pre-authoritarian. So authoritarian is good, eh? And the stakes could hardly be higher. The future of liberal democracy hangs in the balance as it did in the 1930s. National populism stages during times of economic volatility. The latest wave is a byproduct of the appalling excesses of financial capitalism, culminating in the housing disaster of 2008. It was more than a housing disaster, it was a complete racketeering. And it's aftershocks that continue to this day, and the political backlash is now being felt. No, it's not. There's only one group runs the world, and they're on all sides at the very, very top. You know that. Of course you know it. What globalization has brought to benefits to some, the accelerated exchange of people, goods and ideas, has also eviscerated jobs and contributed to extreme inequality. And then they got about identities under threat. This is urban and rural populations are increasingly worlds apart. Well, that's a history lesson in itself, because you can go back to the rulers of Rome and the senators and how they're going to, well, eventually people would rise up once in a while and eliminate some of them, because these people would take the land off the people under different guises too of the time. And then you find out the same senators end up owning it all themselves for peanuts. It's always the same kind of thing. Behind all big movements, there's those at the very top, who own all. They end up owning more and more and more. There's always economic factors at the very top of everything they tell you to believe in. And I mean to believe in, because it's all a belief system, isn't it? I'll put these articles up. And then another one too, how cities are rewiring international affairs. And this goes on to beyond driving economic growth and so on, all the rah-rah-rahs, etc., delivering new urban agenda for development. I mean, it's all smart cities, etc., all planned by the private corporations like IBM. Smart cities. It's all planned. I mean, there's no debate about it. You'll notice. All you've got is the rah-rah pro-believe in it. Isn't it wonderful? Articles. Another one too is the UCLG, United Cities and Local Governments, represents and defends the interests of local governments on the world stage, regardless of the size of the communities they serve. They're headquartered in Barcelona. An organization's stated mission is to be the united voice and world advocate of democratic local self-government, promoting its values, objectives and interests through cooperation between local governments and within the wider international community. And then when you read it too, it's not what you would think it was either. These are all the furthest left you can imagine. The big boys at the top are using, at the moment, all the far, far left. They actually were, I've gone through the articles before, and even the books in years gone by of those in the Milner Group, which became the Royal Institute for International Affairs, Council on Foreign Relations, and now a whole bunch of other groups. Most groups all come back to these guys. If you don't know that, all completely interrelated. And they gave you the present system, and the changing present system, and they run all these organizations from the very, very top. And they don't believe in democracy or your right to decide what kind of future you want. This article also tells you its mission statement and all the rest of it, and a lot of global governance, which means the same old things I've mentioned before. And here's a little statement. It's imperative to increase local financial autonomy, to diversify local taxation towards climate finance, we say. You need to pay into austerity. That's a plan. And get moved off into your crowded cities. And you will go where they tell you to go. And get used to being told, because that is the future. That is the future. Agencies and organizations managing your life with government backing, almost like police powers, in fact. Now, I'm talking about the coming Inquisition. It's here actually now. As I say, they're pretty well intolerant, completely intolerant of any opinions today. God help you if you have any contrary to the official stance. It's not nice at all. Here's an article here, and it says here, Canada now investigates climate denial. Canada's Competition Bureau, we've got a Competition Bureau in Canada. It's an arm's length agency funded by Justin Trudeau's government to the tune of almost $50 million annually. Investigated 3 organizations accused of denying mainstream climate science for over a year, following a complaint from an environmental group. Now, see how it's worded? Very important how it's presented to you. A complaint from an environmental group denying mainstream climate science. Now remember, they've had articles out where all the climate scientists that are all for this are on the payroll of the IPCC. Great jobs. And there's plenty of scientists out there, actually more, who don't go along with it. But that doesn't sound that way here, eh? The Bureau discontinued its 14-month probe in June, citing available evidence, the assessment of the facts in this case, and to ensure the effective allocation of limited resources, according to Josephine A.L. Palumbo, Deputy Commissioner of Competition Deceptive Marketing Practices Directorate. So it's Deceptive Marketing Practices Directorate. But it'll reopen its investigation to receive relevant new information from the public. The complaint was filed by the Ecojustice, it's called Ecojustice Group, on behalf of 6 prominent Canadians, including former Ontario National Democratic Party leader and United Nations Ambassador Stephen Lewis. He's made his career, basically, on this, as NDP leader and UN ambassador. Canada's very, very big with in and out of government and United Nations. Very big on that. Actually, very big even in creating the United Nations. Anyways, he's accused 3 groups, Friends of Science, the International Climate Science Coalition, and the Heartland Institute, of making false and misleading claims about climate change, including that the sun is the main driver of climate change, not carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. How can it be a pollutant, though, if plants need it and everything else on the planet needs it? You know? All greens do. But again, that's getting into the crazy debate, isn't it? And you're not supposed to have any kind of debate on it. It's just you've been told what to believe, and that's it. And if you don't believe it, and remember, this is well named Inquisition time, because this is down to what you believe. And what you believe for the conclusion you're going to come to on whatever side you want to join. And it's so important, as I say, that this whole agenda gets through. It's now treated like heresy. They've actually used these terms too, like climate heresy. And it really, but again too, the whole movement was created to take on religious connotations and religious appearance. That's what Gorbachev talked about. Mikhail Gorbachev, who created his Green Cross group, of course. He was a socialist. He kept saying he was still, and this was a great socialist idea he was head of. And they would make a religion out of this whole saving the world idea and the greening of the planet. A religion. And here it is. Now it's basically an inquisition. When it launched its complaint December 2015, Ecojustice told National Observer it would press the Commissioner of Competition to refer the matter to the Attorney General of Canada for criminal charges against the denier groups. Isn't that awful? I mean, imagine the money the taxpayers have paid for this. Huh? And the group's main group they're talking about is in the States. And then in response to the Competition Bureau discontinuing its probe, Calgary-based Friends of Science said on its blog that the Competition Bureau is a very important enforcement agency. We regret that any of their time had to be wasted on this matter. We are not a commercial entity. We don't have federal lobbyists, and we're not tax subsidized as environmental charities are. And we do not represent any industry. And it's true enough, all these charities, so-called charities on board with this whole thing, they tend to be, and they're heavily subsidized. They're massive pressure groups. Left-wing pressure groups is what they are for the whole socialist world agenda. We know that. Of course we do. And it's not that anybody wants to destroy the world. Of course not. This is a big agenda to change the entire way that you live, right down to, not the distant future, who will be allowed to breed children. That's all part of it. Read their older books. The older books are awfully important. Never changed. It says that in May 2015, Advertising Standards Canada, the voluntary industry group that does not enforce its decisions other than through public suasion, ruled, following 96 public complaints, that 2 Friends of Science billboards in Montreal stating the sun is the main driver of climate change, not you, not CO2, contained categorical and unequivocal claims that could not be supported by the preponderance of current evidence on the matters in dispute, and omitted relevant information, namely that a number of factors have led to climate change, of which the sun is just one. And so here they are, they're going to try to prosecute people. Now, this is a warning too to everybody else, obviously. And it's amazing when you read the people, look at the people who are on this board who brought the claim against, against them, with Stephen Lewis and others there too, and look at their careers. Look at their careers. And it's like a religion. And ambassadors to religion bashing another religion and getting the force of the government to back them up. I mean, that is basically the Inquisition.